Everyone loves Jessica Fletcher, the main character of Murder, She Wrote. She's great. Just the kindest, cleverest, most observant busybody on the block, who people cannot stop dying around. One thing she is not, though, is a romantic. She has had exactly one love in her life, Frank Fletcher, and we have never met that man. He is dead before the series starts. And while she is occasionally pursued, she is typically very fast to shut that down. She is not interested. You are not going to wife up Jessica Fletcher. But that hasn't stopped people from trying. I present, in order from best to worst, the Suitors of Jessica Fletcher. The only acceptable match for Jess they ever gave us is also the most unlikely, since he's a character from another show, Jonathan Higgins, the bumbling sidekick from Magnum P.I., who she meets in a crossover episode. He's absolutely smitten with her, just thinks she's so cool, and frankly it's kind of adorable. They don't really talk or anything, but Higgins does save her from a murderer, so that's cute. He even asked permission to come visit her in her hometown sometime, which is a lot more polite than a lot of the other jerks on this list. Higgins is fine, is what I'm saying. Not annoying at all, just a real catch. Leslie Nielsen appears twice in Murder, She Wrote, and I think his second appearance is mainly because of the pure chemistry between the actors when he played a captain on a cruise ship. They were just so charming at each other that they brought Leslie back as David Everett, an old adventurer friend from high school who she might have dated if she wasn't with Frank at the time, and it's kind of believable these two are interested in each other. They even kiss on screen, and it's just too bad that he's just a real shady character who has to skip town. Otherwise, who knows what might have happened. Probably nothing. Jess isn't the falling in love type. Going forward, she does not reciprocate feelings for any of the men on the list, barring Preston Giles, which I didn't really count because pilot characterization is usually a little off. But they decided early that her love life wasn't really on the table. People will ask her about it frequently, and her excuse is almost always a variant of she doesn't have time. She's just so busy writing books and running fundraisers and coming across dead bodies at an alarming rate. But it's clearly just an excuse. It wasn't until a scene at the start of Season 8, when it clicked for me, that she's not interested and probably never was. Since I've already sidetracked us, I might as well bring up my queer reading of Murder, She Wrote. It's clearly not stated in the show, it was the 90s, but Jess can be easily read as an asexual character. The reason she never engages in dating in the show seems obvious. She's an older woman who looks like Angela Lansbury. She's your grandma. You don't want to watch your grandma go on dates and make out with strange old dudes. But it's not like the show was squeamish about showing older people having a love life. There are countless episodes where women of a certain age are constantly ogling men. We even get a horny old lady of Cabot Cove in Miss Eve Simpson. And sex is frequently a topic in the murder game, so the show is open to mature themes. Not to mention how many young couples we run into on the show. But Jessica's reaction to the topic of sex is frequently similar. Detached indifference, maybe a mild headshake if the context is unsavory. It's just not for her. She acknowledges sex as a reason for people to do irrational things, but it never affects her decisions. Which brings us back to the moment in Season 8, where Eve Simpson is on her usual nonsense about how there are so many men in New York, and Jess has to respond, "I'll leave all the men to you, Eve," in a tone that just feels pointed.
Here, here. Success and lots of gorgeous men. Well, I'll leave that to you, Eve.
A declarative, please stop asking, that a lot of ace people have felt themselves saying to their loved ones whenever they're asked when they're going to get a partner one too many times. It's off the table, alright? Let her solve mysteries in peace. Which makes a lot of this list more and more depressing. When these guys keep pushing her to do things she's not interested in doing, it always feels a little off. Like, almost offensive because it's a breach of her aura. She just does not seem like a sexual person, which is so weird because the actress playing her very much was. You can definitely feel the difference when Angela is playing the character who's probably closer to her actual personality, Jessica's identical cousin, Emma McGill. The distinct performance between the two, Angela's an incredible actor, shows that while Emma is just oozing sex appeal, Jessica is very much not. She's an asexual icon, an extremely capable and observant writer who's also the kindest person in the world, willing to help with any problem, and saving her scorn only for unrepentant murderers. She remembers everyone she's ever met and wants to see them fulfill their dreams. While extremely disciplined and will not accept anyone lying to her, she will never scold and is always willing to accept changes and try new things. Just a really good person who also can't help finding herself trying to solve a murder she just happened to be involved in again for the 200th time. What was I talking about? Oh, right. The men who hit on Jessica Fletcher. Those jerks. Moving on! Fans of the show are aware of Dennis Stanton, the jewel thief turned insurance agent who took over half of Season 7 with his boring adventures. But he first appeared in Season 3 as a suave side character for Angela to interact with and reject romantically. Although it feels like he's doing it as a bit the whole time. Like, his opening move is to imply that she might be kinky because she's a mystery writer. Just kind of going overboard with the whole suave thing. She just kind of ignores it, not responding at all, only pretending to go on a date with him to pursue her schemes. Anyway, I like Dennis Stanton, mostly. Even though his whole thing kind of sucks, he's fun to have on screen, and occasionally something insane happens in front of him, like Ricardo Montalban dramatically trying to shoot him with gruesomely burned hands. Plus, he drops his advances and becomes good friends with Jessica, so if she trusts him, I trust him. This guy didn't really want to date Jessica. He only proposed to her because he thought he was dying, and he didn't trust his family, so he wanted her to handle his estate. And he had good reason, as his niece was slowly poisoning him. Anyway, they figured that out, so he'll be fine now. He's going to continue writing terrible Southern Gothic plays like the Tennessee Williams at home he is. He's fine, I guess. So, after a successful run as an all-time great linebacker, Dick Butkus started doing promotional work and acting in film and television, just anywhere people would give him some money. So he did a guest spot on Murder, She Wrote, and he really wants to be friends with Jessica, very forward, dancing drunkenly with her at a party, accidentally flashes her. It's cute how shy he gets. But the plot gets dropped, so I guess Dick will just have to wonder what wasn't going to be. Also add another Jessica's asexual evidence when she comes across a prime piece of naked beefcake and cannot understand why he might be acting weird? That's not the kind of cake she's into, am I right, asexuals? Season 7 rears its ugly head again with minor Cabot Cover Ben Devlin, who's a friend of Jess's and just so happened to move to town to run a newspaper. Isn't that cool, Jess? Isn't it cool that I live near you now so we could talk all the time? Let me come over to your house and play Mozart for you. Oh no, I put on a rock and roll album by mistake. Well, how about we just both sit here on this couch and talk? And oh, you want to play a tape of Dennis Stanton telling us about the time Ricardo Montalban dramatically tried to shoot him with gruesomely burned hands? And this is the last time we will ever see me? Okay, I guess that's fine. I was just here because the writers weren't sure William Wyndham was going to rejoin the show. I get it. Thus depart Ben Devlin. He was a person. Preston Giles was the only person that Jessica was ever seriously considering dating. And it happens in the pilot, so it probably doesn't count. Anyway, they don't end up together because he did multiple murders, all to cover up his shady past. So yeah. He wasn't a good match. But then in Season 7, he gets out of jail and comes to her and repents. And she thinks back to that time he kissed her in the pilot and... boy, it does not look like she consented to that. I'm not sure what she's thinking here, actually. Well, he wanders off to confront the murderer by himself and gets shot for the trouble. So, not Jessica's problem anymore. That loose end is gone. Jessica is free and clear now. All her exes now have ex-eyes. I assume Leslie Nelson died at sea. After the cancellation of Murder, She Wrote, they made a few TV movies to keep the character alive. One as late as 2003, and they are unfortunately very boring. Nothing really crazy happens. Although one centers around top-secret codes hidden inside a Game Boy that Jessica casually gives to a child. So, that's something. Anyway, at one of these, she goes to a book conference and meets an old friend who asks why they never got together. And the answer is because he just did a murder. But for, war reasons, so it's understandable. I don't know. He's another blustery old author, whatever. I'm just mad this movie cast Daniel Day Kim and didn't use him because the last third of the movie is Jessica reading a dull war book with dramatically bad recreations. David Tolliver's a little freak. He's a young man who volunteers to be her assistant, and then proceeds to ignore all her boundaries, breaking into her hotel room for no reason, inviting her to fancy dinners he shouldn't be able to afford, being the principal suspect in a murder that never gets solved. Just a real weirdo. He confesses his love for older ladies to her, and she very much doesn't want anything to do with him. She does say that she might write him into a book, but then he creepily asks if he'll be the hero or a villain, and she responds as kindly as she can. Ugh, just bad vibes all around. I'm glad we never see this creep again. Oh boy, is this guy a red flag. He comes up to Jess at a party, says he's really been looking forward to meeting her for years now, and he wants to be more than friends. She very politely tells him to mind his business, and then they solve a murder together. You know her. She's always solving a murder. Anyway, this episode is interesting because at the beginning, she flies in a very rare plane. There's so few footage of this particular plane. There's an episode where one of the Cabot Cove deputies' wives is killed, and because he's sure that old Sheriff Tupper is going to fuck up the investigation and he will go to jail, he goes to Jess for help. She agrees, and for some reason this revs him up and he starts giving her a massage. You know, as you do when you're trying to woo an older woman. Her ace senses go off though, and she knows she needs to vacate this situation and kicks him out as quickly and politely as she can. Turns out, this guy has been banging several older ladies while on the clock, creating a lot of cool motives around town. Anyway, this was all a red herring. It was the mailman, and Deputy Martin was quietly fired off screen and never seen again. Dr. Seth Haslett is the definitive second character on the show, appearing in over 50 episodes and mentioned several times more. Jessica and he are close. They are there to help each other when necessary, and spend a lot of time together. Which raises the obvious question. Are these two widowed people who hang out all the time dating? Jessica would say no, obviously not. Platonic friends exist. But I don't know if Seth feels that way. And that kind of sucks. Mostly because Seth sucks. He's a cranky old man who thinks he's right about everything and acts smug all the time, even though he's constantly outwitted by his best friend / woman he is trying to pursue. He's just annoying most of the time, a big old blustery mess. And they even tried to give him his own theme song at one point, and it did not dissuade me from thinking he's a real giant bore.
Hey, this is for $70. You've got 8 parking violations. You owe me $120.
Well, I took the deduction because I paid them all at once.
Real Humphrey the Bear energy to this little ditty. Anyway, he's usually fine, but I cannot forgive him for this emotional blackmail he pulls on Jessica in the finale of season 5, where he suggests that Jessica is just too busy pursuing a writing career. Her garden looks like shit, and maybe she should consider slowing down and spending more time in Cabot Cove with him. I get why he would say this, but Jessica is not your woman, Seth. She does not need to consider you in her plans, Seth. She already spends half her time in Cabot Cove and solves approximately 5 murders there a year, Seth. Stop making this all about you. You don't deserve the attention you get. Anyway, Jessica gets mad at him, obviously, and they are fighting until Seth wanders into her house and eats a poison apple, because there's a weird Snow White motif to this 2-part finale about a rival mystery writer who comes to town to steal Jessica's thunder by solving the mystery first that really should have been better than it was. Then she feels bad that they got poisoned, and she agrees to slow down a little for 2 seasons before deciding that was a terrible idea They gave us Dennis Stanton episodes, so she moved to New York. She's never going to date you, Seth. I knew most of these suitors by heart when thinking up this list, but I had to scan my notes to see if I missed any. Yeah, I have Murder, She Wrote notes. And I noted that she got hit on in this episode where Jenny Lewis plays a piano virtuoso who has been groomed by her instructor from a young age, who just informs her that they will be getting married. But then he gets shot by a booby-trapped piano, so it's fine. This show could be kind of stupid sometimes. Anyway, she's at a snooty party, and this complete asshole is just trying to put on this sophisticated charms, when really he just loves to hear himself talk, and she is not for it. She puts up with him for about a minute, before finally saying, "Excuse me," and dipping out of whatever that was. I do not blame her, this guy fucking sucks. Jess's nephew Grady is getting married into the worst family in the world. This whole thing is a disaster. The Mayberries are a mess. They spend the entire time moving a corpse from room to room, and it's funny because she's played by 2.5 Men's Conchita Ferrell. Haha, this episode sucks. Anyway, one of the uncles gets drunk and comes to her room and propositions her sexually, trying to invite himself in. This is actually super triggering. Why do men suck so much? Why didn't this guy get killed? Just a huge pervert trying to fuck anything that moves. I hate him. Not as much as I hate this guy, though. He crosses paths with Jessica 6 times, and every single time he's constantly doing this belligerent chauvinist thing and putting her into more and more danger because he's a member of MI6. After he got her arrested for murder to protect her, only to make it easier for the assassin to track her down. She is sick of his shit. And yet he keeps showing up in her life and trying to take her out to dinner. Oh, by the way, could you also hang on to this black book of state secrets for me? I'm just a secret agent man with no emotional maturity. Please help me reconcile with the daughter I intentionally abandoned. I actively boo this man for constantly putting Jessica's life in danger. She's already too entangled with state agencies. She doesn't need your help getting her into trouble, Michael. Plus, he's the smuggest sack of shit in the world. Just a real punchable face. Get the hell out of here, Haggerty. The final spot goes to this guy because the gall of this prick. The gall. Jessica gets called to a military base because they found the plane her husband had to bail out of, and there was a corpse on it, which implies her husband might have covered up a murder. Turns out there was a smuggler on the plane. Somehow, and he did it. Sure. Anyway, she catches up with some old friends she knew from her time living on the base, and one of them is her husband's commanding officer, who gets real friendly with her. Just real charmed. Oh, he missed her so much. Isn't it too bad that both of our spouses died? Hey, are you dating anyone? No? Oh, by the way, I lied to our friends so I could have some one-on-one time with you. Let's not let that slip by. Anyway, glad this whole affair got cleared up. By the way, I've canceled your return ticket and will be taking you to my ranch in Arizona for a few days, where I intend to propose to you. She has not spoken to this man in 30 years. He gets confirmation that she was single and immediately jumped to popping the question after he could prove his worth by showing off his cool ranch and private plane. She tries to shut him down, but luckily there's a murder, and she uses that as an excuse to jump on the next plane out of there. He admits that maybe he shouldn't have kidnapped her and asked her to marry him after at most 5 days. But is she absolutely sure she wants to leave? She then makes it very clear that she is not interested in changing things in her life in that way. She has her career, her friends, her charity work, mystery solving. Why would she need love? Not at all something an aromantic person would say. Nope, they definitely didn't write her this way on purpose. So yeah, after she solves the murder, it was some scam involving a fake psychic. He starts getting cute with her again with some veiled language, and she gives him a solid maybe, then promptly loses his number, and we never hear from him again. Good riddance. Oh, also, this guy's actor isn't credited, because he balked at the show's policy of listing all actors in alphabetical order. So they just cut him out of the credits entirely. Fuck off, guy whose name I don't know and refuse to learn because I hated your character. You're almost certainly dead now. So those are all the men who are not good enough for Jessica Fletcher. It's not that they're awful, per se, although some of them are awful. It's just that she doesn't need anyone. She enjoys her life, as hectic and dangerous as it tends to be. She don't need no man, because she already gets a chance to share her love with the world in the form of solving murders. And because she is just not interested in sex, as has been presented several times. She knows what it is. She could pretend to be interested in romance if she needs to, but she's good. Thanks. Jessica Fletcher, Arrow Ace icon.